Welcome to Industry AF. My name is James Frolio, joined by Tyler Boone. And today we have Bobby Bird from Cask Chasers. Bobby Bird is the founder of Cask Chasers, a thriving community of whiskey enthusiasts focusing on affinity for whiskey as well as education and spirits in the marketplace. They have tastings in and around the Delaware, Maryland, and Pennsylvania area. Bobby's also the host of Cask Chasers podcast, a whiskey podcast for new and experienced enthusiasts alike, exploring the world of whiskey while providing perspective from every area of the culture. Whiskey is an art form with boundless expressions. It's not about finding the perfect dram. It's all in the chase. You can find Bobby on Instagram and Twitter at Cask Chaser Bobby. Bobby, welcome to the show.
Bro, it's almost like some poet had put that all together, and you read it tastefully, and I appreciate that. No, dude, I'm excited to be here, man. This is dope AF. So,
thanks, man.
That's language I shouldn't be using. Yeah.
No, you can cuss as much as you want, man. Yeah, Bobby Bird, he's a buddy of mine because obviously I got my Boone's Bourbon. We connected online, and he always brought me on his podcast, Cask Chasers. So I thought, dude, I got to give this guy a solid back. So you are our first interview on our podcast, man. So thank you so much.
That's an honor. That means a lot. I remember my first guest, and it sticks with you, and the guest remembers that too. And so no, man, I appreciate it. And dude, it's good to be here. You are a friend in the whiskey community and outside, and I'm just excited to talk to both of you and, see what we can make of this. I'll see how many jokes land, and we'll see how many don't.
Yeah, so, dude. Well, the cool thing is we finally met at Bourbon Beyond in Lexington, Kentucky. That was amazing. Set times. My Boone's Bourbon was one of the major sponsors. We had a speakeasy there. But you also met my co-host, James, who plays bass with me. But I think we were all pretty lit because it's not a beer festival. It's a whiskey festival.
I don't remember meeting you.
Yep. Yeah, I don't remember much.
But you know what, man?
Yeah.
It was a killer time. You guys were over at, what was the other festival you were doing?
The Kentucky Bourbon Festival.
Yep. And then you jumped down to us, right?
Yeah, so we're working on a film and a documentary kind of thing, and so we had both venues to go to, and luckily we were invited guests to both, thanks to you for Bourbon Beyond, and then the Kentucky World folded us in
for sure
to the Bourbon Festival. But yeah, it's such a cool culture, such a good community, and awesome people, and you just meet everybody. I met at the Bourbon Festival, minus my new best friend Tyler here and James, who is too drunk to remember me, which is the kind of friends I like to have.
Hell yeah.
I met Chris Santos there.
Wow.
He's a chef, Food Network. He's on Chopped, and he's the bald guy on Chopped. If you ever watch that show, where they open up the basket and they're like, your ingredients are crab faces and melons. So I met him in line getting our passes, and so it was just a cool group of people, and it's a really respected, and I think in the music world and the whiskey world community. So I like to see those two worlds come together.
Well, we're gonna ask you a lot of questions here, but one thing I'd like to give, I always love uplifting good people, and the one thing I've always enjoyed working with you is, I'm not saying I'm super young, but I am kind of young to be in the bourbon game. I started when I was 25 and launched when I was 28, and then now I'm about to be 33. But you is what I'm saying. You've always been super welcoming to me because the whiskey podcast world or the whiskey internet world, it can be very vicious. And we've talked about it before, and you've always been super like, hey man, this guy's just trying to do something. And I'm like, thank God there's someone cool as hell as Bobby Bird. You know what I mean? Because it's tough. I mean, I've been around other whiskey conventions, or what do you want to call them, and you just, dude, come on, everyone's online, and you'll just recognize someone, and you're like, that person just gave me the cold shoulder. It's a very small community, the whole whiskey bourbon thing, and you've always just been very nice to me, so I've always very much appreciated it. So,
well, you're a likable guy, but on top of that, that's not what whiskey is about. That's not what it's supposed to be about. It's an art form, and it's super subjective. And to tell someone they're not welcome, or to make them feel not welcome in any way, kind of defeats the purpose of art.
For sure.
And you know what I mean? I don't know a distiller or somebody real in the industry that would turn any pursuer of whiskey or bringing a new bottle to the table would kick them out of the group. I don't know one. It's typically the outsiders, the parallels, the media, the influencers and things like that, which is bullshit, to be honest. But, there's some shitty people in the whiskey industry, man. I mean, there really are, but
yeah,
that's not what it's about.
Well, I mean,
and that's not what it's about for me.
I mean, I don't give a shit. I'll talk about it openly anytime. You heard about what happened to us, like, and I don't want to talk about it forever, but, we had a lot of money stolen from our brand,
Right.
And we saved it, so the liquor industry is just like any other industry. Everyone's hustling. The music industry, it's nuts, man. So it's really cool when you find your people, and not to sound like a typical podcast where we're saying we're trying to harvest a community, but it's a community, man. I mean, dude, like, I was so stoked to meet you at Burn Beyond, and then we had our interview, and I guess Jimmy Vaughn rocked out too hard. We couldn't use it.
Yeah. You learn lessons as you go. That music's in the background of our interview, and luckily we've talked to you and had you before. But he's a great dude, great musician, but you got to pay for that music, and I don't wanna. So we'll just do another interview later.
Yeah. Well, dude, James can do some questions, but I'm gonna pop this bottle and see if you can hear it.
I think it's a perfect time for a little tasting, and we can talk. This is a perfect segue.
Can I say something real quick?
Yeah, of course.
This might help your segue. I'm gonna kill this bottle of Boone's with you guys. And if you don't know this already in the whiskey community, to kill a bottle, especially a special bottle, it's like a Viking funeral. You know what I mean? It means you're not just burning a body in a good boat. There's a ceremony with it. So
right.
I was going to drink Boone's anyway, and I've got 2 bottles and I've got a fresh one, but I wanted to kill a bottle with you guys, and especially a bottle that, that Tyler's name is on. I thought that was important.
Well, thank you, man.
Yeah, man. Yeah, definitely. Most definitely. Yeah.
Well, here,
it's
that's all the ass kissing you get from me.
Well, thank you.
Cheers, man.
Well, here, everyone be quiet. Let's hear the pop. Oh, yeah, there you go.
Nice. Yeah, so this is a perfect little segue. Bobby, I liked what you said about how whiskey is like an art form, and we all just want more people to be involved with the art, and, so, all right, so we're all going to have a little, this is going to be a perfect kickoff here.
What time's it over there for you, Bobby?
It's noonish.
So it's, 9 in LA? So here we'll have a little sip.
So, Bobby, you seem like an experienced drinker, maybe even a whiskey sommelier of sorts. Start us off on the right foot, and even for some listeners who don't know exactly, what's whiskey and why is it so special?
That's a good one. So I struggle with the term, and I appreciate it with the term sommelier, because I try to take any pretentiousness out of what I do. And but there's a struggle between those two, that and being a pedestrian. And I hate both terms, and I've been called both terms, by the way. And so I've had people say I'm very pedestrian, and then I've been called a sommelier, and I want to meet somewhere in the middle. I'm going to use it this way, art. And if we think about art, we talk about art, the thing that comes to mind is probably, a painting. And you'll go to one of these contemporary art museums, and you may see that classic, one paint stroke down the middle of a white canvas, and it's a $50 billion piece of art, and whatever. But who are we to say that the artist that painted that didn't put some type of emotion, power, feeling, experience behind that paint stroke? Who am I to say that that's not a piece of art? And it's each to their own, which is what's beautiful. It's a buffet, and that's what whiskey is. You don't have to get everything at the buffet. You just can taste what you want and what you like. And the thing about whiskey too is it's very psychological, and that's actually my background. I have a degree in psychology, and what I love about it is, if I drink this whiskey after a breakup, a bad breakup, and I had no friends around, I was really in a dark place, it wouldn't be good. I wouldn't like it. I wouldn't enjoy it. But I drink this whiskey with a good friend, Tyler, and I found, we found each other through social media. I believe in what he's doing. I'm old school music, so I really dig his music. So mentally, it all folded into place. And to me, it's a gorgeous whiskey. it's not the best whiskey I've ever had. Flavor wise, it's delicious. It's very good, but it means more to me. I put it in the top 10 category simply because of the connection it has. So that's what whiskey is to me. It's when you're drinking wine, whiskey, or beer, it's where you find yourself. And 99% of the time, we find ourselves with friends around a fire, around a bar, celebrating, having a good night, having a good time. And that solvent, that lubricant, is there to help you be you and help you break any introvertness or experiences that you may not otherwise experience. And I think whiskey has been there since the beginning. There's a historical element. It's beat prohibition. It's beat, the naysayers. It's a classic drink in every movie. You take the shot when you're ready to do something dangerous. But it's also the greatest thing to toast with. And it's also dangerous. It's poison. It's ethanol. And it's scary to dance with. And you have to be careful and you have to respect it, just like the people you're with. Conversations can go one way or another, politically or whatever. But you have to be careful. And if you want to maintain a relationship with friends or whiskey, you have to respect it. And if that's not art, I don't know what is. And then you think about the distillers putting it in a barrel and going, well, I hope this is fucking good. You know what I mean? Cross your fingers.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's really just it's Frankenstein's monster, man. It's going to come down from that lightning bolt, scary as fuck or awesome.
Wow.
And you know what I mean? That's cool to me, man. That's rad. That's music. I don't want to get too long-winded here, but I think about, I'm going to answer your questions in the longest way possible. Your editing team's going to love that. I think about something Frank Zappa said.
Oh, wow.
And Frank Zappa said, when I play, I'm not like other musicians. I'm not one of the greatest guitarists of all time because I'm a great guitarist. It's not Eddie Van Halen playing Eruption, notes he's practiced over and over again. When Frank Zappa would go on stage, it's whatever came to him. And he could fuck it up or he can make it. He just had to understand what he was playing and he had to trust his bandmates. And that solo, and Jimi Hendrix was kind of the same way, just was what it was naturally. So I love natural art, and whiskey is probably one of the most natural arts, second to some funky guitar player on stage that's going to be like, that looks back to their drummer and their bassist and nods and goes, hold on, I'm going to do some weird shit.
I got
and hopefully it works.
Mm-hmm.
That's why I love whiskey, man. It's just, that's what it is to me. And,
definitely took the metaphorical answer to that question. I really appreciate that. And it helps you stay in the moment for sure.
I mean, that was like a poet,
yeah.
dude. That
was like a poet. But I think what I also want to know is like physically and scientifically, what is whiskey?
So you ever go into the woods, walk in the woods and you smell something, or you're around a campfire and, our brain thinks what we see is very last. It's very minimal. Visually, we're shitty visually. We're terrible as a species visually. And so we think first, and a lot of people say we think first with our eyes. That's not true. We think first with our smells, with what we smell and what we remember from that smell, and then what we taste. And then I think, in my opinion, and a lot of people would argue this, it's with our eyes. But the picture has to be taken first with what we smell and then what we remember. You're walking down the street, you catch some girl's perfume, and you'll go right back to the first time you were with Becky Smith in the basement and she wore that cheap perfume, but it was hot at the time and you really had a crush on her.
Totally.
You know what I mean? It all brings you back. So with whiskey, physically, it's stripping natural elements from wood and grain and yeast and water and these basic ingredients, because that's what whiskey is. It's wood, yeast, and grain and water. But it can taste different depending on what wood it was put in, how it was put in, how long it was put there, how those two woods were blended, what the yeast was doing, how aggressive the yeast was with making sugar. The copper, you could even argue the flavor comes from the still itself, if it's a copper still or a column still. So those flavors from the elements that we all know from childhood. I mean, you're out playing in mud, eating, chewing on a stick. Whiskey has that flavor, cinnamon, chocolate, nutmeg, wood, leather, old leather, new leather, a saddle, that smell of hay.
Yeah.
Those flavors exist in whiskey. And I think dude, that's what we want to taste, right? What we know, we love, and it's people talk about being connected with nature. Whiskey gives you that because it's such an aggressive chemical, ethanol. It strips away those sugars and flavors that we know, and it presents it on a plate from just 4 or 5 basic ingredients. No chef in a kitchen can do that, in my opinion, other than a whiskey maker or a wine maker or any spirits maker, without adding a certain spice. If I gave you 4 ingredients, I said, make me, any dish and every dish, you would struggle. With whiskey, you can do that.
Well, on that note, let's cheers. And I'd love, because this is live and you have such a good nose and palate for it, would you mind tasting the Boones and just tell me what you taste today on it? Because it's the very bottom.
Sure.
It's the very bottom of the bottle.
We can all do a little cheers and taste test.
Cheers, buddy. Cheers, Bobby.
Cheers.
Yeah, cheers to JR, our studio man over there.
Yeah, dope studio, guys. Seriously.
Ooh.
I think it's clean. So full disclosure, I'm smoking a cigar, so certain elements are going to be different than what you may taste. But what I like about Boone's is it's young, and I'm a fan of young whiskey. I would say there's nothing older, very old in here, which is not a bad thing. It's very grain forward. I love fresh grain. It's good grain. I can tell it's good grain. It has a lot of early sugar notes. So when I smell it, the first thing you should do is, when you drink a whiskey, is smell it, and that's what's going to bring you into the next portion, which is tasting it. It's very early sugar, and what I mean by that is raw sugar, very unrefined sugar, and not your typical what you're going to put in your coffee. So it gives it almost a caramel, nutty, woodsy kind of thing going on, but it's very grain forward. If you've ever worked on a farm and you scoop up a handful of feed and you smell it and you get that strong corn or grain, it just smells so good and woodsy. That's what young whiskey can give you, which is I really adore.
Like that. Thank you.
Yeah. You got to chew it too. So what that means is when you put it in your mouth, you got to let your mouth do the work. You have a lot of things happening in your mouth, man. That can go a long way. That's that statement.
Explain what is chewing the whiskey? What is that?
It's literally just
my wife is in the background. She just heard what I said. She goes, "What's this about?" It's my OnlyFans, Dana. Go away. We're gonna make tons of money. Anyway, what I put in my mouth? She's asking for something. I'm trying to get it out of my pocket.
That.
So, like what Bobby's saying is, this is also a cash strength 117, 58.5 ABV. Put on your tongue, kind of swish it around a little bit. You're gonna get a whole bunch of notes on the floor here. Bobby,
what
go
a
ahead.
What a chew is I like to say like opening up sunflower seeds. Yeah. When you chew on a sunflower seed, how you're trying to get the salt and the nut. So you chew it up, you physically chew it, and what you're doing is you're getting it in the cheek. There's this really cool event that happens with whiskey where it hits the back of your cheeks and it kind of gives you this tart, really like aggressive flavor, because you have flavor sensors all over your mouth, and the saliva is trying to interact with that and calm it down and lubricate it and change it for the digestive. What you're doing is you're running away from that. So you're letting it slosh in your mouth and you're chewing it so you can taste it without your saliva and your taste buds trying to trick you into thinking it's something it is what you don't want it to be. It is ethanol.
Yeah.
It is alcohol. It is poison. And your body is going to want to say, this is not good. That's why when somebody takes a shot of whiskey for the first time, they go, holy fuck.
Yeah.
So what you're trying to do is trick your body into saying, no, there's stuff in here. Let's find it. So you chew it, you push it around your mouth, under your tongue, to the back of your tongue, to the front. And what you'll start to notice is you'll get the notes that the wood gives you, the red line of the wood past the char, which is that sugary, really fruity. This is a very fruit-forward whiskey to me. It's very what we call rock fruit, big seeded fruit.
Stone fruit?
Plum, stone fruit, yeah, same thing. Just very, very big, beefy fruit flavors. Something you would like caramelize down and then create some type of like canned cranberry, and it's my jam, by the way.
Nice.
I get a lot of those kind of notes, and it's countered by cannons that aren't necessarily always a bad thing. Cannons are off notes, but being a musician, sometimes off notes are really cool.
Oh, those are the best ones.
And yeah, definitely. And I think there's a lot of off notes, but that's what a young whiskey gives you, man. It just gives you, it's very volatile, but very fun. And it's just a fun whiskey. It's a fun whiskey. It's fun.
I just tried the chew real quick, and I'm getting different flavors now, which is...
Yeah, I was going to ask you, James, you probably never done that. And he's had the Boones many times. And you probably have tasted something different.
There's a different experience when you're shooting it or just sort of drinking it with water, too. I know that chemically affects...
Opens it up. Yeah, it there's a lot of oil in there. And when you put the water in, it breaks that oil up and brings a lot of the flavor molecules to the top. You want me to really blow your mind real quick?
Yeah.
You want to, here's a trick.
Please.
I want you to do this. Trust me. Yeah. I want you to take some of the whiskey.
Mm-hmm.
All right. You got it in your glass. And I want you to pour in your hand.
Oh, yeah.
About a dime size puddle in your hand. Right. You probably know where
really
I'm going.
Getting involved.
You're going to mix it up.
Yeah. Right.
You're
going to rub it in your hands.
Yep.
You're going to rub it in your hands. And then immediately smell it. And ethanol evaporates, alcohol evaporates faster than water. So what you're left with,
the smells,
is this with these really grainy,
it's beautiful smelling.
It's gorgeous, right? Yep. It's grain. That's the grain that made the whiskey. That's it. You got it. You smelled it now. You see it. You're there with it. It's like you're holding it before it went in the mash tun. Now drink your whiskey.
Wow, that'll like open up your sinuses.
Oh yeah. If you got COVID, call me.
You'll do it. So now if you sip it, you get the you get the meal, you get the grain, you get the grain grain is gorgeous. Grain is sweet, full of sugar. And now you get that grain first, and then the fruit comes later. So it's like a perfect bowl of oatmeal. You know what I mean? With like a little fruit on the side.
I'll tell you what I really like about this particular whiskey is the kick. It's got like a spice, vanilla, rye punch at the end that I really like, things that have a peppery spice note.
Well, I'm digging this for James because obviously James, you're more of a beer drinker, right?
Yeah, I used to sell beer.
Yeah, so but he loves good finer things in life, and
we all?
Uh-huh.
Yeah, right. But I think he's learning a lot from Bobby here because I've never sat down and showed you any of this stuff.
I've never rubbed my hands in whiskey before, so
yeah, but I mean, but this
James,
is like
you're
go ahead,
a
buddy.
bassist, right?
Yeah, I play bass among other instruments. Yeah,
he plays bass with me.
So you play bass with him.
Mm-hmm.
So whiskey, sometimes, or any beverage, really anything you're eating or drinking, fine food, fine dining. Sometimes we get so stuck on the front man or the lead guitar, but sometimes you dig in, you go, man, that bass riff is just happening.
Totally.
Foundations.
You know what I mean? And you can find that by that rubbing your hands together moment and really getting the grain first and really letting the grain do its work. Because the grain is the basis.
Yeah.
It's back there rocking and rolling, man. The design, the idea of the grain is to be what we call balanced. And balanced in the whiskey world it has so much depth and meaning. Balance doesn't mean, okay, this is a balanced meal or whatever. Balance means that everything is doing its job to the point, it's so in tune that it even if there is an off note, that backbone, which is the grain of the whiskey, keeps it in beat, keeps it in track. And if all the other notes, the fruit, the vanillins, you hit the rye spice, all the ethanol stripping notes from the wood itself can do whatever it wants to do. It can be as funky as it wants to. It can hit every note it wants to hit, but that spine is always there to keep everybody in line. And that's what grain's purpose is. And it's a balanced whiskey. So when somebody says this is a people all the time go, this is a good whiskey, this is a great whiskey. When I hear a whiskey person say, man, this is a balanced whiskey, that's the biggest compliment you can get right there. That's it. That's a compliment. Balanced means it's on point. It's on game. yeah, it's doing its job, and yeah.
Well, James has some more questions, but I got
I
a
don't think
question.
I've answered any of your questions. I think I
No.
just go off on these rants.
I mean, dude, every time you and I do a podcast, we're just like that mother, and I'm just kidding.
You're doing great, man.
No, you're doing God's work,
Yeah,
Bob. No, but Bobby, I did want to ask you this. Right now, just because it's like a whiskey question, what are you drinking right now? What's one that you're like that you maybe rediscovered or that you brought back into your collection? What's one that you're digging right now?
Jack Daniels.
Really? Now, why?
I had a very perverse, aggressive. Jack Daniels to me was
Same.
this prostitute or this ratty chick that I, met back in the day, and she was amazing. She was hot. You couldn't marry her because she just had too much going on. but she was really a good person. She was really awesome and had a lot of good personality, and she was a good person, and she was the right person. You probably should have married her. Mm-hmm. But back when you were 21, she was just, hey, go fight that guy for no reason. So I revisited Jack Daniels recently with E.T., who's the brand ambassador, national brand ambassador for Jack Daniels.
Okay.
And he reintroduced me to Jack because I shit on it all the time on the show, jokingly. I mean, they're a big enough brand to take it.
Totally.
It would be like, they're too giant. I thought they were too giant to notice me, but they did notice. And
congrats.
Apparently which is kudos. Apparently
You're doing something, right?
My podcast is good enough in the whiskey world that the wrong people notice me. So anyway, instead of losing it on me and fighting me in an alley somewhere,
they wanted to
Jack Daniels
reintroduce you somehow.
They have their goons.
Yeah.
He introduced me, reached out, so we drink whiskey and they're bonded, just one whiskey of the year. And
nice.
So I'm really diving into Jack Daniels and understanding, look, man, McDonald's is good. It's good. I love high-end restaurants. I love going to,
I agree with you, dude. There's some days you're just like, I want that grilled chicken sandwich.
It's just fucking good, dude.
Yeah.
And I'm sorry, but yeah, I've had farguard, duck, and blah, 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 whatever on a plate. I've eaten it all. The best steak I've ever had in my life served to be a Michelin star chef. I've been lucky enough to experience these things in my life. But sometimes McDonald's it just is. And I'm not saying Jack Daniels at McDonald's, but it's mass produced, but it's made by people. There is a chef at McDonald's somewhere that's going, hey, this is $1.50, but it's fucking jamming.
Okay. I hear what you're putting down. So you're saying that Jack Daniels is very solid foundation, very drinkable. Did we lose you?
No. He's there.
You want to know how to bullshit? How to find a bullshit whiskey drinker?
How's that?
Here's how you find a bullshit whiskey drinker. You guys good?
Yeah.
No. Here's how you find a bullshit whiskey drinker. You go to somebody's house and you're like, what do you got? And they're like, I got Blanton's. I got Eagle Rare.
E.H. Taylor.
I got E.H. Taylor. I got Macallan 25. Those are fantastic whiskeys. Don't get me wrong.
But they're the ones that everyone talks about.
But I'm like, where's your white label Jim Beam at? They're like, I don't have that. Well, then how are you a whiskey drinker? Because that's good. What's wrong with that? And first off, Blanton's. Let me go off on a rant real quick about Blanton's. It's a single barrel, which means it can't be the same flavor every year. It's made up from one barrel.
That's exciting.
The consistency from that is impossible.
Totally.
So when somebody says Blanton's is my favorite whiskey, you're full of shit.
You're just on the Facebook groups. I mean, dude, just to toot my own horn, we won double gold San Francisco this year, and we beat Blanton's, which was huge for us. But anyway.
But but you're not a single barrel, and that's what makes you a winner, because that's difficult. A single barrel is different every year by design. But to create a whiskey that's not necessarily from a single barrel, that may be a blend, maybe maybe some things were added to it, not flavoring, but different barrels were added to it. You created this. Maybe it's rye forward, maybe you played around with grain, maybe whatever. And to win that, first off, I know those judges, they know what they're talking about.
Yeah.
That to me is kudos, man. That's what makes it a good whiskey, dude. Can you Yeah, I love Blanton's.
I mean,
don't get me wrong. I'm not beating up on them, but fuck you if Blanton's is your favorite. I won't even talk to you.
I mean, James, you know what we're talking about? It's like there's always like 4 bottles that everyone's like, you got like they'll post in a group like found my bottle today. Run down to, Lee's Discount Liquor. They got 5 left. It's such a thing that that I find when people are getting into the whiskey world, they don't know what to look for. So that's what they find first, and then they get so attached to it.
We call them taters.
Taters.
That's the terminology for the whiskey world for somebody that chases
top 40 radio.
Yeah.
I have a question because this also ties back into the one question I've asked so far. But you said single barrel. Can you explain to the viewers or possibly myself that don't know what that means? What is a single barrel whiskey? What is that?
So there's a few terms you're going to learn in the whiskey world.
There we go.
Single barrel is not to be confused with single malt. So single malt whiskey means one distillery. So they didn't blend it with other distilleries. So a single malt Scotch means it came from one distillery. Single barrel or single cask means the master blender, the master distiller, the master whoever found one choice barrel and said, this specific barrel has such a fine liquid in it that it can't be blended, it can't be blended with other whiskeys to create a profile, which blending is brilliant, don't get me wrong. But they, for whatever reason, feel like this one barrel produces a quality in itself and it needs to be shared with the world. Colonel Blanton's, which was the first one to create the single barrel. That's the point. There's 2 arguments there. Is it A, to service your quantity, meaning instead of blending all my barrels together, I'll release 1 barrel at a time a year? Or is it truly because this 1 barrel was choice and was impeccable? And I believe that the Blanton single barrel is choice barrel picks. I know those guys over there. I think they're doing a good job. Guys and gals doing a good job. But that's what single barrel means. I mean, it just means it comes from 1 barrel. And ideally, that barrel was just out of everything. Because remember, it's nature. So all these barrels can be in the same rick house. But these barrels have different pieces of wood staves in them. And each one of those pieces of wood produces off notes, or maybe there was something in the wood, something in that stave, something in that 1 barrel. Maybe it was in the right temperature at the right point of the rick. Maybe the upper left quadrant of the rick house got enough light or enough heat or enough whatever that this barrel behaved a certain way and it created a choice whiskey. And we're going to single barrel that whiskey because what came out of this barrel was incredible. It doesn't need to be blended and created differently.
Yeah.
Interesting. Yeah. And I know and you could probably talk a little bit about this too, Tyler, like the wood that the cask or the barrel is made of informs the flavor. So like Boone's is from...
Well, all bourbon, and I guess, Bobby, we should, I guess, for the listeners, a bourbon is brand new American white oak charred barrel, right? But a lot of it comes from how deep the char is or how like light the char is, so like Boone's is kind of, you can kind of see through. It's not super light. Like, dude, I ran, you might have connected with them too. I connected with Glenn Howerton from It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia. And he, it was killer. And he gave us his 4 walls. It's Irish whiskey, but theirs is pretty light. Yeah, we killed it in like 30 minutes. But it was like you could look right through it, which doesn't mean it's a bad thing. It's just, it's probably a lighter char, right? But so. Anyway, go ahead, Bobby. But I mean, like,
No, I'm sorry, I interrupted you.
But I'm just saying.
You hit the nail on the head.
But I feel like you're the man of the hour, man. Let's tell James here. You were saying like the grain or the wood or whatever, the barrel. But a bourbon is, and go ahead, like what a real true, because there's a difference between whiskey and bourbon, which I'm sure you know this, but
there's a lot of definition to bourbon. There's how much, what percentage of ABV can go into the cask, come off the still. But the basics of it are. It's got to be at least 51% corn to be a bourbon. Okay. It has to be aged in new barrels, new charred barrels. And that's the baseline of, then you can get into bonded and things like that. But that's the baseline of what a bourbon is. And it can't be flavored. No additives can be added to it.
And once you open it and take it out, that's it. You know what I mean?
That's it.
And you use that barrel a second time, that's a whiskey. Right.
That's now just a whiskey, which is great, which is fine. Scotch does it. That's how their law is. They have to use a used barrel.
I'm learning all the time, Bobby, and correct me if I'm wrong. Didn't it used to be bourbon was 2 years or straight? Now now it's 6 months, but didn't the law change? Wasn't it like,
No, it's straight whiskey still is a minimum of 2 years.
well, but I thought a bourbon had to have been back in the day longer than 6 months. Now isn't I know,
right, but now bourbon, it doesn't matter how long it's in there. You can throw it in there for 30 minutes and pull it out. You got a bourbon.
I think they probably did that because of the market, right? Because like, hey, we can't keep up with this.
And but there's a problem with that too, because I love my Pabst Blue Ribbon, but
Hell yeah,
Pabst
brother.
made a whiskey they made a bourbon back in the day where they just literally put it in there for like 3 seconds.
Yeah.
And technically it was a bourbon.
Wow.
But right, but they just ran it through, charred barrel, and that was the end of it. But the consumer will tell you if you got a good whiskey or not. So that's what matters at the end of the day. If you have a good whiskey, or if you're creating a whiskey that's bourbon, which is fine. The problem with bourbon is it's very difficult to expand on flavor. You really have to know what you're doing. And that goes back to the grain. And like I said, it has to be 51% corn, because traditionally corn was it was a product that could easily be wasted. This goes back to the Civil War. Rye and wheat were made for bread. That's how you made soft tack. That's how you fed your troops. But corn was created so abundantly that when Irish settlers and Scottish settlers who taught us how to make whiskey came, they said, this is a grain that you have a plethora of, and you're wasting it. And yeah, maybe you're feeding it to cattle or whatever, but you have so much corn. It's such an easy and transitional grain. Let's utilize that. So it was a marketing thing. It was a money thing. It was, let's not waste our wheat, our rye, our barley on whiskey. Let's use that for what we need it for. And let's take corn, which is this product that we can grow anywhere, anytime, any place.
And back in the day, I mean, if my dad was here, he knows so much of this information, but back in the day, they would, it was like bartering. Hey, I got a whole bunch of whiskey, so it's very traditional.
Yeah. And like anything else, that's the currency, right? So there's an argument of where bourbon, the name, even came from. Some people say Bourbon County, and some people say that it was a family. But what we know is that when a whiskey said bourbon on the side of it, it was considered to be the purest form. And we know it came from grains that weren't being, because back in the day, whiskey was made of everything.
Yeah.
They would darken it with boot polish.
And
that's where we get into
and it was
right. That's
killing
where we
people. Bonded, right?
Yeah, that's where we get into bonded, where the government stepped in and said, well, hey, we're going to regulate, and we're going to not let you do that. But bourbon, the name bourbon had a legacy. It preceded itself. So when you saw in the barrel bourbon, or you knew it came from bourbon, it was bourbon, you knew that meant quality. And now today there's whiskeys all over the world. There's, American single malt is making a movement, rye whiskeys. You got regular American whiskeys,
Japanese whiskey,
and Japanese. You got whiskeys all over that aren't bourbons that are fantastic. But bourbon meant something because it meant quality. If you had a bourbon, you had real whiskey. If you went to the bar and you were a cowboy and you said, give me a whiskey, God knows what you were getting. And you may die right there. But when you said, give me a bourbon, you were paying for it. And it meant quality.
I hear you. Yeah. This again, I'm going to ask a question because you guys know more than me. Yeah. And this is also for some listeners who don't know. And this may help define what whiskey is. You went down another metaphor, which I love, dude. I love your attitude about art and things that take a little bit of personal expression. But let's say I know nothing. I don't drink. I don't know what's going on. What is the difference between bourbon and whiskey? Maybe that'll help inform some of our listeners. So you were like, yeah, bourbon's got to be 51% corn. That's a prerequisite. So maybe you can fill in the blanks of what the other two are.
If you asked me that a few years ago, I'd have a different answer than today.
I'm looking bourbon, for the straight facts right now.
Yeah. With bourbon, other than the legality and the what it means to be bourbon, with bourbon, you're going to get classic notes. let's use another metaphor. Stew. If I said I'm going to make you a stew, and I came out with a pot pie, you'd be like, "This isn't a stew."
Yeah.
But what is a stew? You know what I mean? It doesn't matter what kind of meat I put in. It can be beef, it can be chicken, it can be whatever. That's a stew. With bourbon, you're getting a certain consistency. You're getting a certain flavor. You're getting a very corn, sweet, vanilla. There's going to be some oak. There's going to be some nuttiness. There's going to be some certain spices. If it's a high rye bourbon, or for example, it's going to be very spicy. But you're going to get a baseline. And and this is where it gets very, what I'm about to say is going to be very controversial. When you get a bourbon, you're getting the core, the heart, the true sentiment of what Southern whiskey is. And I think bourbon means classic. I think bourbon means,
I agree.
Oak forward, corn forward, and you let other people come to your. It's if I go to a Southern Baptist church, I know what to expect. When you think church and it's not Catholic, that's bourbon. You know what I mean? You're gonna have a sweaty preacher up there. It's the same show, but there's gonna be a passion behind it. There's gonna be a depth behind it. There's gonna be a richness behind it. Mm-hmm. Bourbon's rich. Bourbon's. I don't want to say one note, but it's very purposeful. It's a stew, and I think that's what bourbon means doing. Now, again, bourbon is new oak. So what you get from new oak, you're going to get new oak flavors. You're going to get nutty. You're going to get certain tannins that maybe that play well. You're going to get strong, deep, rich fruit flavors. You're going to get earthy flavors. You're going to get sugar. You're going to get vanilla. You're going to get cane. Real sugar cane. If you ever chewed on a piece of sugar cane, because it depends on how much you char that barrel. And I said earlier, what's called the red line. The char isn't giving much flavor. The char is a filtration system. Mm-hmm. What you're doing when you char a barrel is you're caramelizing that one layer of wood. So you have the char, and then behind that char where the whiskey travels is a red line of wood that's been caramelized. And if it's an alligator char, level 4, level 3, or you're toasted like a 2 or a 1, that caramelization of that wood is going to be different. It's going to release different sugars and different fruit profiles and different grain profile, flavor profiles. It depends on how you chew, but you're always going to get that wood, chewing on a piece of wood flavor, that sugary, sweet, vanilla, oaky, forward flavor. Whereas other whiskeys, the wood's fine, but you're more focused on secondary flavors. Maybe grain, maybe a secondary finish or something like that. But bourbon to me is true form whiskey. It's raw whiskey, and it's a basic ingredient. It's it's spaghetti, man. It's just like it should be spaghetti. I don't need it to be anything else. You can make your sauce taste like whatever you want it to taste like, but it better be spaghetti. And a bowl of spaghetti when you get it.
Because consistency, Well, the one thing that's very, American is blues music, right? And like bourbon.
Right.
And that's why those kind of like when we met at Bourbon Beyond, like that's one of the most unique freaking festivals out there, man. Like, dude, you can go to Coachella and you can dress up and, everyone looks hot and no one's listening to the music. But like at a blues and like, you know what I mean? Everyone's there to like post on Instagram. But But if you go to like Bourbon Beyond.
Bourbon is blues.
Yeah, it is blues. And dude, I had the best time meeting you. Dude, I was so hammered when I met you. Like, it was so much fun.
Oh, it was great. We had a great time. It was amazing. And then taking me back to that middle of nowhere back, where members only, talent only area. And I was like, I'm not supposed to be back here. And the guy was like, I'm not supposed to be back here. But I was like, no, I know that guy. And he's like, all right.
Yeah, that was pretty rock and roll. The artist area.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah. But you hit the nail on the head. I mean, let's use music. Yeah, I'm a metaphor guy. You just got to get around it.
I was going to say, you speak in metaphors.
I love it.
That's how I think. Maybe I'm autistic. I don't know. For my autistic people out there, I'm sorry, but I feel you and I love you.
You're doing great, Bobby. Let's hear the next one.
But bourbon is blues, man. But it can be Stevie Ray Vaughan or it can be BB King. I mean, it can be both. It can be blues has its own level of different flavors, but blues when you hear it. That's what bourbon is.
Okay.
You know bourbon when you get it.
That's a good phrase. You know it when you see it, or you know it when you hear it. Maybe you know it when you taste it. So I think what I'm gathering is it's at least new oak and at least 51% corn.
Yeah.
And there's entry level to the barrel, and it has to be at least 40% ABV, but that's all whiskeys.
But I mean, misconception. Everyone thinks it has to come from Kentucky. It does not.
It does not.
No.
It has to be American.
It has to be American though.
But it does not have to be from Kentucky.
Majority
Although
of
the Kentuckians would argue that they make the best bourbon.
But bourbon in Kentucky is religion, so like it's every time we go there to do any type of Boone's bourbon stuff, it's like the easiest sell. If I go to Arizona, it's like, people there want to drink mezcal or tequila, so it depends where you're at. But
yeah, like this, man, I'm right outside Maryland. And the best crab cake I ever had my entire life was in Louisiana. And if you're a Marylander and you say that, that's
what Maryland does, dude. Crab cakes and football.
You know what's so
crab cakes and football.
It's so funny because I'm from Georgia, but I lived in South Carolina for a long time, and Georgia's like the peach state, but actually South Carolina grows and exports more peaches, so it's one of those things.
You can't say that out loud, but you can't. Yeah, but that's it. That's the metaphor. Yeah, bourbon's Kentucky, but dude, there's people out there making fucking amazing bourbons.
Bobby, have you been down to Charleston, South Carolina?
Mm-hmm.
So that's where now we're with Nippatati with this guy named Traxler. He's the man, dude. If you're back down there, go see his spot. He makes a incredible gin. But that's where me and James met, and dude, we did for years, and we had no responsibilities. Our rent was so freaking cheap. All we did was play like blues gigs like 5-7 times a week. Some days we do 3 gigs in a day, but that's when I started the Boones. And you're talking about you had like your prostitution back in the day with Jack Daniels. Mine was with Jameson. And dude, we were drinking a lot, James. Remember those days, dude? We were playing like smoke barbecue up till 4 a.m.
Cut my teeth playing all those gigs.
Yeah, I know, awesome. Dude. I got my chop. I mean, we were touring forever, but when we were not on tour, we would just do that, to make money, and it was just such a fun time, man. But I was drinking a lot then too, and I really respect what you said in the beginning of like there's a respect to it. There obviously everyone goes through moments, but I was definitely drinking my face off when I was living in Charleston, because that's what everyone does.
This keeps coming across very kiss-assy, and I'm not trying to do that. I'm just being honest, but you're probably one of the better people out there to have a whiskey.
Well, thank you, man.
Well, I mean that, but hear me out. It's who you are. So let's break that down real quick. You're a young guy. You're young, but you're. If somebody's like, who's Tyler Boone? I'm like, well, he's a young guy, but he's playing this music that comes from our era. It's very blues. It's very, if you were in the late 90s, 80s, you know what I mean? Early 80s, you'd be chart topping. That'd be it.
Stevie Ray Vaughan
would be like, can you show me some licks? I mean, he would be asking for notes, but whiskey needs to be handed off to a certain generation, and it needs somebody that can look back in time and say, this is an art form that existed among these older people that they got right.
Damn, dude,
got very little
that was
right.
like probably the nicest compliment I've ever gotten doing whiskey. That was because that's how I feel about blues music, where there's always like the young kid that's like, oh man, like I got to meet Buddy Guy, or I got to, and it's like they feel like the torch got handed. I've never had anyone say that about my bourbon or being in the bourbon industry. So thank you.
We need you, man. We need you. We need you out there showing younger people and people in that generation that whiskey is the next. It's the next movement, and you got into it at the right time. Dude, whiskey is it's revived itself recently. And whiskey died in the 80s.
2015, I remember I was like, what the hell is Eagle Rare? What's Angel's Envy?
Right.
Why is everyone obsessed with this? And then all of a sudden,
dude, I would go buy a bottle of Pappy Van Winkle back in the day for $60. And
wow.
Right. And I'm 40, so I'm not old, but I mean, that's not too long ago.
$60.
$65 for a
tell the listeners like what I'm there's going to be bourbon listeners here, but tell like the craziness of Pappy. Like what? It's usually like a couple $100, right?
1,000.
Yeah. Yeah.
Interesting.
$60. So that's unheard of.
For someone who doesn't drink a whole lot, why is that? Why is that so expensive? Why is that so like valuable or like quality?
It's allocated.
So I'm not in the music world, although I do play a little guitar. And I brought my guitar to not play.
Here's my first single.
You're such a showman.
Why is Taylor Swift tickets $35,000, whatever ridiculous price it is? It's fabricated, man.
Yeah.
You know, so there's a great documentary that came out on Netflix called Pappy. I don't remember the name of the documentary, but anyway, the thing that happened was called Pappy Gate. And Pappy Gate was Buffalo Trace created a whiskey that they made small amounts of, and everybody did this. And if I'm being 100% honest with you, if Angel's Envy, did this, or anybody else did this, or, you got your pre-fire, whiskeys, for example, but there's so many whiskeys out there that were making small amounts of whiskeys and creating, but Buffalo Trace really got to the market with their core line and everything. But what they did was they had a certain whiskey, Pappy, Weller, that was so hard to find and so hard to get because it was such limited, but it was cheap. It was just limited. No different than any other place. But these rich entrepreneurs and governors and people in the Kentucky area said, listen, this is what people want. And there was this gentleman who I'm trying to get on the show, and he's in that documentary. I can't remember his name off the top of my head, who worked there and was stealing whiskey. And he created this mafia-esque, he became the godfather mafia of whiskey in Kentucky. It's a great documentary. God, I wish I could remember the name of it. But anyway, so what he did was he was at his house. I think he lived in a trailer or something. He was just a line guy. No offense to the blue collar people, but he was just this worker. And he had this guy come to his house. And he said, look, man, can I get a bottle of this whiskey? And he's like, yeah, I can get you a bottle of it. He goes, but there's not much of it. He's like, I'll give you $2,000 for a bottle. And the guy was like, what? And so he did it. And then his friends, his judges, councilmen, and business people said, they went to these parties and they saw Pappy there and Weller there, and they said, so this is what we should be drinking. And they were like, yeah. And he's like, well, get me a bottle. It's going to cost you $4,000 and $5,000. And it just became this movement of whiskey hood that elitists wanted to take a bite out of. Dude, there's a whiskey right now in New York, and I don't want to bring her name up or her whatever, because I haven't tasted it. Maybe it's good, maybe it's not. But she made a whiskey, and you can Google this. Your listeners can Google this. Mm-hmm. She made a whiskey for the elitist. She says that right on her website. It's for the elitist. It's $1,000 a bottle.
I think I know what you're talking about.
And the reviews are terrible.
Yeah.
It's a base. You know what I mean? It's a basic whiskey at best. Whiskey has a shelf. Whiskey. There's a return on investment, and whiskey can only be so good. Come on. Mm-hmm. But it's all about developing this zeitgeist.
Yeah.
And creating this mentality of this is the thing. That's my thing with Blanton's is Blanton's. I did a blind tasting with Blanton's and Weller, and it was a 4-bottle tasting. I had Blanton's Weller 107, Old Granddad, and I won't tell you the winner until after I tell the story. But so we had this whiskey tasting among whiskey aficionados and all these people in Richmond. So I'm like, let's have this big whiskey tasting. I have a great following. People respect what I do, what I say, so I can get a good group of people. So I got this big group of people together, and we're all tasting, and everybody was there, and they're all whiskey snobs and everything. I love them to death. They're whiskey snobs. We did this blind tasting, and Weller came in second. Blanton's came in last. Wild Turkey 101 came in first.
Wild Turkey 101?
101.
What?
And I've done this tasting consistently, Wild Turkey 101 wins.
Wow. I always use that as an example of harshness.
People are.
Oh, say it again, Bobby.
Wild Turkey 101 is incredible, but
go.
it's Wild Turkey 101 is incredible. It's your mentality. Remember, I told you at the very beginning, it's all psychology. Your brain tells you what's good and what's not good. That's how it works. Think about music. Think about whatever. The music today, I don't want to go off on a rant. It's just a fucking terrible music. I know I'm 40 and I'm like, okay, maybe I'm being like my parents and this shit is gross, but I listen to music and I try to be biased, and I'm a very open-minded person. and I listen to some of this music. I'm like, this is terrible. How is this reaching the charts? I mean, you know what I mean? But
So
I blindly tasted these whiskeys, and I'm telling you, Pappy is good. It's not great.
okay.
It's just I've had my family members come over and they're like, Bobby, you're a whiskey guy. Pour me a dram of something. And I'll say, I want you to taste this, and then I want you to taste this. And people, not even in the whiskey world, just friends of mine, people I know, I give them 2 glasses, and I do the same thing every time. And I'll give them Old Granddad 114, and I give them the 10-year Rip Van Winkle, and the bottom shelf $30 Granddad wins 100% of the time. It's never failed me, and I've done it 1,000 times, and it's just not. It's you know, is Rolex the best watch made? Probably not.
I understand what you're putting down. So like, Pappy's really expensive because of scarcity and presentation, essentially.
Well, you know,
Now we're in a world, but let me check you real quick there. It's no longer scarce. That's the other problem. Back in the day, yeah, but now it's not.
No,
it's not scarce. It's a fabricated market. It's made up.
I used to work at this
not scarce.
This, and they still the Boones, but this is when I was getting into whiskey. I was so poor. I was living in Nashville, 2015. It was Cork Dorks. They put on the Nashville Whiskey Festival too. And what I learned was that stuff was where some guy would come in who was not a regular. You know how this goes, like local, mom and pop shops. Not a regular. Hey, you got any Pappy? No, we don't got any. But the guy that comes in every week and buys a bottle, he would come in and be like, hey, you got that Pappy? Yeah, it's in the back. Like they just hide it in the back for, it's always available. You know what I mean? But they developed this kind of scarcity thing. It's kind of like, Kiss does this every year. My buddy Sean, who helped develop Artist Farm with me, we'll probably do this eventually. His dad's going to come on. He's a keyboardist in the Integrated Dirt Band, which is dope. But what I'm talking about is he used to work for Kiss. And every year Kiss goes, this is the last tour. And they said it like a couple weeks ago. And then last night on Rock Feed, Paul Stanley goes, we're not retiring. And they do it every year. But they always announce this is the last tour, and all the tickets go out. And the next year they're like, you know what? There's another tour. So it's the market.
To use that analogy for whiskey, and again, I'm just gonna abuse your listeners with metaphors. My favorite song of all time is, I'm gonna say this, and you're gonna be like, okay, it's a good song, but why your favorite? But then I gotta explain why. My favorite song of all time is Stranglehold by Ted Nugent.
Cool.
But I was and this is a true story, Waylon Johnson, a good friend of mine and I grew up in Texas, Oklahoma. So I grew up in the South, but if you want to call Texas, it's its own country. But anyway,
I was born in Texas.
Waylon and I were on the back roads of nowhere. We were just driving his old beat up truck. I mean, it's a country song in the making. And we're driving, and we're young. We're 17 years old, and we're a little drunk, a little high, and we're just driving. And on this radio, Stranglehold comes on for the first time. And him and I were just like, we never heard it before. Mm-hmm. And we were like, what the and we were just in it, dude. We were just
totally.
It was just it hit us in this moment, this right time. We were on top of the world. We're best friends. We're these two buddies that are just, we own the world. We're 17. Our parents don't know where we're at. We're in his truck, and we're just fucking cruising, man. And we're just loving life. And Strangled came on. Today, Ted Nugent's been, to some degree canceled because he's a psychopath. But that song is not by far the greatest song ever written. It's not the greatest ever anything. It's just that moment in time makes that song so valuable to me that I would, if I'm paying in a metaphoric currency, I'd pay all the money. We do that with every whiskey, man. It's whatever whiskey the people tell us, or whatever moment somebody's in, and some high guy up in the whatever. And I love Fred Minnick to death. God, I love Fred Minnick. He's good friends. He's a good man. He knows what he's doing, but he's got to be careful, because if he says a whiskey's great, he ruins the market.
Yeah.
Because people say, well, Fred Minnick said. Tell me the last time any Pappy has won anything.
Oh, good point, because I've never seen them win anything. Never.
And the San Francisco Whiskey Awards is amazing human beings, real tasters. I know a lot of the judges, and they're real whiskey people. They're tasting all these whiskeys. Tell me the last time any of those won anything.
No.
And No, because it's not the best whiskey out there. It's just not.
Well,
and it's not an honest whiskey. It's not honest, and people know that. People will call you on your bullshit. Boone's, Tyler's come from the gate saying, "Look, I'm new to this. I'm a rock and roll guy. I fell in love with whiskey because it's cool. It's got a cool vibe behind it, and here's what I got to offer to the world." And then his whiskey was good, and we said, "Okay, here's a guy we can trust. His music is good. He put a whiskey out. It's good whiskey. It tastes good. It's made by good people. It's backed by a good guy who cares." And I personally connected with Tyler. I've hung out with him. I've talked to him many occasions. I'm like, he's not even in the room. I'm talking about him. And what I tell my listeners, and I've had people say, his whiskey's not good. I'm like, why do you say that? Oh, because I've never heard of it. Go fuck yourself.
Oh, well, dude.
Go fuck yourself.
Love you.
You know what I mean? Seriously.
Well, love you to death, man. And on that segue, it means the world you want to come on it. I still deal with a lot of, they always say, people always hate on something new. We still deal with it all the time. There's people that left us reviews.
I love hate.
But then it's like now I take it as a form of a compliment, And on top of that, I just want to say thank you so much.
You had a post. You had a post on Facebook, and I haven't yet. I'm going to comment because I'm an asshole. But some guy said you did this random post on your Facebook page. I think it was on the Boone Facebook page, and somebody, all these, congratulations, all these people that are backing you, people you don't know, people you do know. And then some guy was like, your whiskey sucks, man. And I looked him up and I saw who he was, and I judged the book by its cover, and I think I'm accurate on those things. And I just wanted to, I'm like, where's your thing? Where's the thing you've given to anyone? What have you made? What have you created? What have you backed?
Yeah, man.
What thing do you have that you can staple your name on? Nothing. Piece of fucking. Who are you to come on and say somebody's piece of art is worth nothing or worth something? No one. If you didn't like it, move on. Well, move the fuck on. You know what I mean? I don't like Malort, but the whole city of Chicago fucking bows down to it. You know what I mean? So
people can like what they like, dislike what they like, say what they want. There's a lot of noise out there, but Bobby,
social media, man.
Well, dude, Bobby, we thank you so much for coming on, and dude, I feel like I'm on cloud 9 from all those fucking comments, man. But we want to end it with you got some quick questions, right?
Yeah, we got a couple. We'll do a rapid fire. We meant to talk a little bit more about your podcast and your brand, Bobby.
I'll make them short and sweet.
We spent the whole time talking about Boone's, man. So yeah, let's do a little rapid fire round. Where are you from?
I live in Delaware now. But I'm from Texas, and I spent the last bit of my teenage years in Oklahoma, Choctaw County.
Okay.
Awesome.
Or Choctaw Nation. Yeah.
So you've been pretty active online with Cask Chasers. You seem like very well qualified. What's the biggest lesson you can share from just being in the whiskey industry? If you could distill it down to one sentence, if you could even put it on a billboard, one Twitter tweet, what's your biggest lesson from this industry?
Be honest. Be honest. Say things that are truth.
Okay.
I like that.
Bullshit.
What's the most surprising part of the industry?
The people. The makers are incredible. The parallels, the media, the snobs, the enthusiasts can be aggressive, but the people that make it, the people that are in it, are the best people in the world, and they're amazing, and they come from every walk of life, and I love every one of them.
That's awesome.
It. Great connecting with creators. What's your favorite? Oh, excuse me. Who are the people you look up to, and what's a collaboration you'd like to see happen with Cask Chasers?
Well, I think my hero in the whiskey world are Jim McEwen, who revived, in my opinion, who resurrected Scotch whiskey. And if you're drinking Scotch whiskey today, 99% of the time you could probably thank Jim McEwen. I think there's other masters in that world, but I think Jim, who's since retired, 55 years in the industry, I think he's absolutely incredible. I think Peggy No Stevens in the American whiskey world, she's the first female master taster, and she's just a class act of a human being.
She is, man.
If I could do any collaboration, I would do one with her. She's
Awesome.
amazing. She's an amazing person, and she's just a monster. Yeah, and I would love to do something with her.
Watch
yeah,
watch
absolutely.
Neat.
She's the Martha Stewart of our industry.
Yeah, watch
Yeah,
this documentary Neat.
yeah.
Great. Me and her
Great film.
me
Is
and her
that
did
the film that's there's a trailer connected to Cask Chasers website? I think I saw that documentary.
Yeah. So a good friend of mine, Greg, created this film. And Jim McEwen's. It's really Scotch focused. But it's called The Water of Life. And
Okay, so that's something different. I gotcha.
Yeah, it Neat's incredible. Water of Life is another one of those films, though, that if you want to really, it's a beautiful piece of film. It's a beautiful artwork, and it really, where Neat focuses on American whiskey, I think the counter to Neat would be The Water of Life. I
Cool.
think that movie is very Scotch focused, and we owe everything to American whiskey to the Scots and the Irish.
We do.
So I think that film is apropos if you want to get into this industry or this world or understand it. Yeah.
Well,
Awesome.
James, there is one final question, and we gotta.
Bobby, where can we follow up with you online? Where can listeners find you?
Google Cask Chasers. CASKCHASERS. It's the hardest name to say. It doesn't really roll off the tongue. The whole idea was to keep looking for new things and to be open-minded. But you can follow me at Bobby at Cask Chasers, or you can follow Cask Chasers on Instagram. We just started. We kind of don't really rock and roll on Twitter too much anymore, but we just started a TikTok, and we're in our 40s, so
You're
give
hip.
us time. We're trying our best. We're not very good at social media. We're on Facebook, but you can listen to me any platforms. My YouTube channel is. I just had my only thing on there to date that's worth anything, in my opinion, is my Sam Hewin from Outlander interview. I just interviewed Mike Rowe, and
Nice.
that'll be up soon. So keep an eye out for YouTube. Yeah, just check us out. I think, in my opinion, if I'm tooting my own horn, we're honest. We only bring people on we really believe in and we care about. You're never going to listen to an episode where I pander. I pander a lot, but I believe in the brand that I talk to. I taste it beforehand. If I don't like it, I don't believe in what they're doing, I don't bring them on the show. And I think that's what we bring.
Well, dude,
to the
we're
table.
gonna blow you up on this. I'm so excited because I'm gonna have my first bourbon episode with a badass podcaster, man. So Bobby, this means the world, dude.
Dude,
Love you, man. I hope one day you
Same.
come out to California and we can do some shit. I want to take you to
Yeah.
$7,000. I want to get you drunk, baby. So let's do something.
yeah, I want to come out, dude. I mean, there's a movement in California happening. You guys got to push off that wine and get whiskey in the movement. I
Or
don't know. Maybe
everybody's
large,
They always want
good
mezcal.
California whiskey.
They always want mezcal, and I'm like,
Yeah.
drink some fucking bourbon,
Dude, it'll
So,
kill you. It's awesome. Yeah.
well,
Yeah,
dude,
man. No, dude, the pleasure is mine. Honestly, I love what you do. Both you guys are brilliant musicians.
Thank you, Bobby.
I can't tell you how much I love you and how much I care about what you guys do. Tyler, dude, your whiskey is on point. Keep moving forward. Get those followers. Get those get those backers. Fuck the naysayers, because naysayers are you need poison.
Because they'll
We
never
don't
be
live in a
thing.
world that doesn't exist without chaos. So use that chaos to your advantage. And trust me, man, you're doing good stuff. Keep moving forward. I love you.
Love you too, man. Thank you so much, Bobby. Bobby, Cask Chasers, everybody. Cheers, man. One last sip. If you got any more left, yeah. Cheers, buddy.
Cheers.
Yeah, I do have a little bit left. I killed this bottle. I killed it. We have a bottle kill.
Nice.
We have a Boone's Bourbon bottle kill, and that's we'll have a Viking send off to that bottle later. It'll go on all my good bottles that I care about. Stand mean something to me. They're very special, so that'll be on the shelf.
Well,
But
thanks,
here's
man.
my last sip. Cheers, buddy.
Cheers, James.
Cheers, y'all.
To the first interview of
Brilliant.
Industry AF.